lovers, and welcome back or welcome to Nat Cat's Bookish Cafe. Today I am here to do a book haul. Alright, so I usually don't do book hauls unless I binge buy books, but I am going to try to do them on a more regular basis, like maybe one a quarter or something if I remember, if I buy enough books, things like that. This haul is going to encompass the books that I bought since my last haul, and I will go ahead and link that haul up above and down below. So these books should be from July, August, September, and October, and I am on a book buying ban until after my birthday and Christmas. So until January, I'm not planning on buying any books for myself. This should be a total of 29 books if I counted correctly. It is a combination of physical books as well as books that are on my Kindle, and I will be going through them in order in which I purchased them. I will go ahead and let you know how much each book cost me, but I'm not going to go through the total cost that I spent over the course of these last few months. I am going to go ahead and do a quick review of my spending during my end of year wrap up. So without further ado, we'll go ahead and jump right in. All right, so these first few books might be familiar if you watched my Germany vlogs, because I think I hauled them in that video, but since it wasn't an official haul video, I'm going to go ahead and include them here as well. So the first book is going to be Twisted Love by Ana Juan, and I spent $7.41 on this book. This is a pretty popular romance story, and I have to admit that I know nothing about this individual book. I just know that everyone seems to love this series as a whole, so I decided I would go ahead and give it a shot. I have not read this book yet. If I have read a book, I will go ahead and let you know, but I have very high hopes for this series, especially since it is written by an Asian author, and I would love to have a go-to Asian author for the contemporary romance genre. The next book is The Fine Print by Lauren Asher, and this was $8.67. Once again, a very popular romance novel. This one I know a little bit more about. It seems we have three brothers who are part of a very wealthy family. I believe this family does maybe like entertainment parks or amusement parks, kind of Disneyland-esque, and their grandfather passes away and leaves certain stipulations in the will that each brother needs to fulfill before he gets his inheritance. And each book in this series seems to follow a different brother as he tries to achieve that goal, as well as finds a love interest along the way. I believe in the first one, the brother is being asked to create a new section in the amusement park to kind of get his creative juices flowing again. I guess he is really passionate about creativity, but has kind of gotten away from that in the past few years. And I believe he hires the love interest after she drunkenly sends some criticism about his plans possibly, and they start to work together to come up with something that'll work for the park that isn't maybe as exuberantly expensive. The next book I got was actually a children's book, and I just got it because it was adorable, and that is The Little Ghost Who Was a Quilt. This cost me $11.30. It is written by Neil Nason and illustrated by Brian Eggschweiler. I should probably be able to say that. It sounds like a kind of German-esque name, but as you can see, it is just a cute little story about a ghost who is actually a quilt and how he's different than the others, but how in the end he kind of finds that there are some things that are special about him, and it's totally okay to be different sometimes, and yada yada, the usual feel good about yourself story that you would get from a kid's book. I'm mostly here for the art, so very excited to check this out. I probably should have read it like around Halloween, but oh well, it's been sitting here decorating my shelf and making me happy every time I look at it. Up next we have Before I Let You Go by Kennedy Ryan, and I spent $8.62 on this book. I was really interested in checking out Kennedy Ryan. She seems to be a relatively popular author, and I think usually she does more like sports romance and maybe some Hollywood stuff, which sports romances in Hollywood settings aren't always my favorite, or at least I'm not super comfortable with them yet. So I decided to go ahead and start with this one because I was hoping it would give me similar vibes to one of my favorite books, 7 Days in June by Tia Williams. In this book, we are following a couple who I believe has children, and they've decided to go their separate ways, but they're still raising their children together. And as they do that, I think they kind of start to fall in love again. So it seems kind of like a second chance romance. I'm hoping that it's really heartfelt, has a lot of themes of family and healing, and I hope that Kennedy Ryan becomes a new go-to author because she seems to have a decent backlog going on. Next we have my first Kindle book, and that was Psycho by Only James, and this was $6.99. This was a series I started when it was available on KU, and unfortunately I think it recently got taken off KU, and so now I have to purchase the books if I want to read them, and I honestly do want to read them. So I went ahead and purchased this one, and I have read it. I actually read it in one of my Germany vlogs, and while I didn't like it as much as the first one, I still enjoyed it. In this series, we are following a group of brothers. I want to say there's maybe like 7 or 8 of them. I don't remember the number, but there's a few of them, and they were all adopted by a billionaire who was looking for children who were diagnosed as sociopaths or psychopaths, and then brought them into his home and taught them how to be vigilantes rather than serial killers. I guess they're still serial killers, but the good kind. These are all, I believe, male-male romances in which these brothers find their love interests and just become obsessed with them. They are psychopaths, so they're not really capable of love, but they are very capable of obsession, and I think it's just a slightly darker romance. So I feel like if you're looking to dip your toe into the darker romance genre, these might be a good place to start. This book is the second one, in case I didn't mention that, but in this one we are following August, and I believe he's considered kind of even strange among his other psychotic brothers due to his autism, making it even more difficult for him to pretend to be a normal human being with normal emotions. And he is a very intelligent professor, and one day he stumbles across Lucas, who was a FBI agent before the FBI threw him into the mental institution because he is a it's not a clairvoyant. It's kind of like if he touches someone, he can see a bit of their past. And after he accused another FBI agent of being a serial killer and only had his abilities as evidence, they thought he was a little crazy. So he finds himself at the university teaching there alongside August, and August instantly becomes obsessed with him and decides that he wants to protect him from this FBI agent who is now hunting down Lucas so that he doesn't expose him. The last book I bought in July was actually my souvenir book from Germany, and that is If We Were Villains by M.L. Rio, and this cost $14.75. This is a pretty well-loved dark academia book that is also, I believe, queer, which is one of the reasons I've decided to pick it up. Dark academia isn't like my favorite genre or anything. I haven't read too much of it. I'm not overly drawn to it, but I do love me a queer book. In this book, we follow a group of student actors, I believe, who are very passionate about their craft. In fact, maybe a little too passionate. At the beginning of this book, we see one of the characters being released from prison after serving a 10-year sentence for murder. And the detective who was on the case back then, I believe, has kind of retired and was like, hey, I kind of don't think that you were the one who committed the crime, so can you tell me what happened? And then the character Oliver ends up kind of telling the story of obsession and murder and all that jazz. So I am very intrigued. I haven't gotten to this yet, but hopefully I get to it soon. All right, moving into August, I read the first book in this series via KU, and I believe it is still available via KU, but I don't get that very often, so I've decided to go ahead and purchase the physical books, and I bought the first 4 books in the series. The first one being Soul Eater by Lily Mayne. This one was $12. The second book being Eden, which was $12.24. Book 3, The Reek, was also $12.24. And then book 3.5, a novella, Win, was $10.24. You will see one more book in this series pop up during this haul, but this is a post-apocalyptic queer monster romance series. In this book, we are following a different monster in every book as they find their love interest, who so far has always been a male. And in this world, about 20 years ago, there was a rift that opened up between our world and the world where these monsters came from. The military's reaction to it was to destroy, and unfortunately ended up destroying most of the land as well. At this point, most humans are living either in walled cities where there's a lot of poverty and disease. Everyone's kind of squished together, not enough resources. There's also the military bases, because the military has a lot of control at this time. And then there is the wastes, where the groups called raiders live outside of military protection. So far, I have read, obviously, Soul Eater, I have read Eden, and I have read The Reek. So I have read the first 3 books in this series. The next book, and I'm hoping to get to it this month in November, but it's not on my official TBR, so we'll see. This novella follows, once again, the characters in this first book, and they are, to this point, still my favorites of the series, but I've really been enjoying it so far. The characters are always really sweet, and the smut is very good. And those were actually the only books that I bought in August. So I guess August was a pretty good month for me. But then starting into July, the first book that I bought was a continuation of a series, and that is Volume 4 of Heaven Official's Blessing by Mo Xiong Tong Shui. And this book cost $14.57. You will see, I think, a couple more volumes of this throughout this haul, and I will only be explaining it one time. In this book, we are following Shilon, and Shilon is a prince who ascended to a godhood many, many generations ago at the age of 17. At the beginning of this book, we see his 3rd ascension. He has ascended and fallen a couple times, and throughout this series, we get to see him during the current timeline, his 3rd ascension, as well as his past. In the present timeline, he is joined by Hao Chen, who is known as one of the most dangerous ghost kings on the land. However, Hao Chen seems to have a past with Shilon that is causing him to be deeply devoted to him, and together they set off to fight ghosts and ghouls that are wreaking havoc on the mortal realm. This is a very slow romance between these two. I will also say that this is a series that I highly recommend binging, hence why I've been buying so many volumes of it. It was originally an online series where the author, I'm assuming, just published one chapter after the other, and has since been broken up into volumes, and sometimes it gets broken up in not the most convenient and clean-cut ways. But still, I am really enjoying this series, especially since volume 3. Things have really started to pick up for me. I have read up to volume 4 at this point. All right, so the next 3 Kindle books that I got during Stuff Your Kindle, I believe it was called. So they were actually free. So $0 spent on these next 3 books. The first one is Cam Fan by Danny Lakely. And in this book, we are following Justin and Tyler. Justin is a cam boy. So this means that he performs sexual acts in front of the camera, usually live, and people can comment, live stream, and people can make donations so that he, takes off his clothing faster and, things like that. And one day, Tyler decides that he's going to use these cam shows to kind of explore his sexuality a little bit more. He came from a small town and was never able to explore his queerness, and he instantly feels connected to Justin and becomes like a little bit obsessed with him. But luckily for him, Justin seems to be reciprocating those feelings and actually offers for them to partner up for a scene on his cam show. And from there, they decide that they would like to take this relationship off camera. I've already read this book. I thought it was a decent time. It was short and really smutty, and honestly gives you what you were asking for when you picked up this book. All right, so the next book I got is called either Wings of Ruby and Flame or Prince of Ruby and Flame. It has 2 different titles, one on the book and one written underneath it. But this book is written by L.J. Swallow. Once again, I got it for free. And this is a polyamorous reverse harem dragon romance. I believe we have a woman who is born with the power to destroy the dragon race. And so 4 dragon princes set out to hunt her down, and I believe at least 3 of them decide that they are going to protect her, or maybe all 4 of them. I don't know, but it's her and a bunch of dragon shifting princes. And that's all I know, and that's all I need to know. And the final Kindle book that I got during Stuff Your Kindle was Willing Sacrifices by Latrexa Nova. This, I believe, is a collection of short stories. I'm thinking 4 short stories. And in this series, we are living in a world where the gods seem to need sacrifices so that they don't destroy the world, and those sacrifices are people who are willing to go and spend some time with them, if you get what I mean. I do think that this is relatively BDSM heavy from what I remember, or at the very least kink heavy, and it just sounds like an intriguing story. I have to admit, I didn't realize it was a collection of novellas when I picked it up, but I'm hoping it's still a good smutty time with some people getting down dirty with some gods so that they can save the world. Okay, all the remainder of the books on this list were purchased in October. I think I went pretty hard in October because I knew that I was not going to buy anything in November and December. So I would say the majority of the books are here. The first one being Heaven Officials, A Blessing, Volume 5. This was $15.99. I already talked about the series, so I'm not going to mention it again. I will say it is on this month's TBR, so hopefully I get to it soon. Up next, we have another continuation of a series, this one a comic, and that is Fence Volume 4. This is by C.S. Pacat, as well as Joanna the Mad and Joanna Lafuente, I believe. Yes. And this is a queer sports comic. I believe it is YA. I started enjoying it more in the last comic, so luckily it is picking up for me a little bit. It's not my favorite contemporary comics, just don't do too much for me, but I do love C.S. Pacat, so I'm going to go ahead and read anything she puts out. And this book was $14.99. The next book we have is Alpha of Mortal Flesh by Ben Alderson. This is the 3rd book in the Dark Morn series. The first one was Lord of Eternal Night, which was a Beauty and the Beast retelling between a witch and a vampire. The second one was King of Immortal Tithe, and this was a Hades and Persephone telling. And this one is obviously a Red Riding Hood retelling. These are all technically in the same series, but you don't have to read them in order or even read all of them. They are essentially standalones. I'm just reading them in order because that's what I like to do. In this book, we are following a man who is a witch. This is something he needs to keep secret for his safety. He is in an abusive relationship and is not very happy with his life. It seems like there's a lot of corruption going on in their kingdom, and there is a lot of murders happening that are being left unsolved. But one day he is summoned by a wolf who needs help, I believe, finding his brother. And obviously this is a relationship between them. And I think it will also continue to kind of touch on the relationship between humans and the vampires, because that has been kind of the overarching issue between the first two books. I really enjoyed the first book in the series. The Hades and Persephone one didn't do as much for me, but it focused more on fae than on paranormal creatures, and I'm not huge on fae. I'm also not huge on the Hades and Persephone retellings, so hopefully this one goes over better with me. The next book that I got is The Whispers by Ashley Audrin, and this was $19.23. This is from the author of The Push, which is a book I recently gave 5 stars to, so obviously I wanted to pick up her next book. I didn't initially plan on getting the hardback, but it was on sale and it was like less expensive than the paperback, so I was like, why not? I have to admit, I know literally nothing about this book. I purely picked it up because of the author, and considering how much faith I'm putting in this author, I'm totally okay going into this book blind. I'm assuming that it's kind of thriller-esque, again, just like her previous book. And with those kind of books, sometimes it's good to go in not knowing that much so that the story can surprise you. Next, we have a teeny tiny book, quite literally, and that is Galatea by Madeline Miller. This is her short story. I believe it's about a man who creates a statue that is brought to life, and he very much loves her, but in a way it is also a rather abusive and possessive relationship. I absolutely love Madeline Miller's writing. You can see the Song of Achilles has a place of honor there, and I also have a couple copies of Circe. Those are a little further down, so you can't see those, but I'm super excited to check out this short book. I haven't gotten around to it. I'm sure I could read it in one sitting. I mean, it's so teeny tiny, but I think this is a really cute book, and despite its tiny size, it still cost $12.99. I then also ended up purchasing a copy of Frankenstein, and this was actually on sale for only $10. I'm gonna scooch a little bit closer so that you can really see the beauty of this book. This is obviously by Mary Shelley, and it looks like William O'Connor is the illustrator. I have never read Frankenstein before. It is one of the few classics that I am interested in, and as you can see, it kind of is like filled with different art. I mean, look at that. For $10, a hardback just filled to the brim with gorgeous art. I mean, look at that. So very excited to have this. I picked this up at Barnes & Noble last month, and obviously with the Book of Frankenstein, we have a scientist who decides to create a creature out of the different parts of corpses and then abandons that creature like the crappy father that he is. And we just kind of follow the story from there. Like I've said, I've never read it. I don't think I've ever watched a movie about Frankenstein or anything, so I am really intrigued and excited to get to this story. Up next, we have another book I bought on Kindle, and that is The Prince's Dearest Guards by Bo Van Dalen, and this I believe is also a novella, and in this we are following a trans prince who is looking for love, but his shyness seems to continuously be getting in the way of that happening. One day he is fulfilling a tradition in his kingdom in which the prince sets out to either find or slay a mythical creature, and he takes with him two very attractive guards, and as they go on their journey they start to form a relationship. So this is once again a queer polyamorous story. I do like polyamory in my books, so I pick them up every now and then, and this one I'm very excited to pick up, especially since I do enjoy reading trans representation as well. And I don't think I mentioned that this book was $3.99. Next, I bought book 4 in the monster series by Lily Main, and that's Gloam, and this book was $12.24. I went ahead and snatched this up because I am trying to read one a month, so if I do get to win here in November, I would read this bad boy in December if I got the opportunity. I just wanted to make sure that I had the next book in the series available to me so that my reading ban does not interfere with me continuing with this series. Next, we have another book that is featured on my November TBR, so at least I'm kind of getting to the books that I'm picking up, and that is A Perilous Undertaking by Deanna Raybourn. This is the second book in the Veronica Speedwell series. In this book, we are following Veronica, and after the death of her guardian, she is ready to set out into the world and explore butterflies and explore nature and all the world has to offer. However, that is all kind of put on hold when a man shows up, and am I right? And tells her that her life is in danger. He asks her to come to London with her. She sees this as a free ticket to London because she's got to go there anyway to catch her ship off to her adventures, and he ends up dropping her off with a man named Stoker, who's a taxidermist for like elephants and other large creatures. So he's pretty gruff. He's kind of a hermit. He's kind of had a rough and maybe scandalous past that he's trying to avoid. The two of them are very shocked to find that the man who originally came from her has been murdered, and it looks like some people are wanting to point their fingers at Stoker. However, she knows Stoker was with her at the time, and so she sets out with him to solve the mystery of this murder. And I'm assuming each book in this series is going to go ahead and have them following a different murder or mystery, and I'm hoping we get to see the relationship between her and Stoker bloom as well. This book cost $14.28. Next, we have a few Kindle books that I picked up just because they were relatively cheap, and I thought, why not? And the first one is Outdrawn by Diana Gray. This one was $2.99. In this book, we are following two women who are well known for their comic drawing skills, and each of them are looking to make it to the top. And that goal is within reach when they are given the opportunity to work on a very well-known comic that is expected to just blow up and win all the awards, and they are unfortunately asked to work on this together, which they don't really want to do because they have kind of been competing with each other since college. I'm assuming that it is eventually going to become a romance between these two women. I don't read too many comics, even online or anything like that, but I still think it is a very interesting concept and a great background story for this romance. Also, the cover is just adorable. This was kind of a cover buy, to be honest. Next, we have The Dom Who Loved Me by Lexi Blake, and this book was free, so that's why it's here, and also because I want to read it. In this book, we are following Sean, and he is someone who investigates possible terrorist organizations, and he comes across Grace, who has a high-level position at a company he believes is a front for an illegal organization, and he decides the best way to get close to her is to seduce her by being her dom. She's obviously a very powerful woman in the workplace and is actually, I believe, also the mother of 2, but in the bedroom she does like to be submissive. It seems that some sort of murder occurs and she starts to realize that Sean might have ulterior motives for being with her, but at the same time Sean is starting to struggle between keeping his mind on the job and falling in love with Grace. So I'm hoping that it's a steamy, fun time, and it was free, so I can't complain. Next we have How to Bang a Billionaire by Alexis Hall. This book was $1.99. In this book we are following, I think his name is Arden, which is like not the greatest name, but he seems to be attending Oxford. He doesn't really have any goals in life. He's kind of like, I don't know what I'm gonna do next, but somehow he ends up being the sexual partner of Caspian, and Caspian is a billionaire and he's someone with a lot of rules. He lets Arden know like, hey, this is when we're gonna get together, this is what we're gonna do, and this is when I'm going to be done with you. And Arden at first is like, yeah, that's fine. But then he starts to learn a little bit more about who Caspian is behind this controlling mask. And he's like, you know what? I'm going to win you over for good. I'm assuming it's just going to be a fun, smutty time. We need books like that in our life. I have enjoyed work by Alexis Hall in the past, so I'm interested to check this book out. Next we have Off the Ice by Avon Gale. This was also $1.99, trying my hand at a little bit of sports romance here. And this is a male-male hockey romance. Only one of the characters is a hockey player, and that is Tristan. He is a relatively good hockey player, I believe, but he's also a realist and knows that he won't be a hockey player forever, so he is out here to get his business degree. Unfortunately for him, I believe he gets a little distracted by his sociology professor, Sebastian, and Sebastian is trying to get tenure and doesn't need any distractions either, but in turn gets distracted by Tristan. That's such a hard name for me to say, Tristan. It seems that the two of them decide to kind of form a secret relationship, and this is very difficult because Sebastian is out of the closet and he doesn't like being put back in it, but Tristan is not really sure how he feels about being the first openly queer player on the hockey team. I have read a queer hockey romance in the past, Him, you may know it, and had a decent time with it, so hopefully I do with this one as well. Second to last book on this haul, we have The Shattered Gates by Jen Hall, and I got this for 99 cents. I have to admit this book has been on my TBR for so long that I barely remember what it's about. I believe that it is queer, and I also believe that it's magical. We seem to have a man who is opening a letter from his old roommate, expecting just the key inside, but is instead transported to a magical world where he feels drawn to his roommate and his goal to wake an evil god that'll destroy the world. So I don't know if this is some sort of villain origin story or what, but it is a relatively long series, but it is one I've been wanting to give a try, so I picked it up for 99 cents, no problem. And the last book of this haul is a continuation of a series that I've already mentioned a couple of times, and that is Heaven Officials, a Blessing, volume 6. I just wanted to make sure if I got to volume 5 this month, that if I wanted to get to volume 6 in December, that I had it on hand, and you already know what this is about, so we don't need to talk about it, and we can finish this haul finally. Woo! I've been talking for so long. All right, guys, so those are the 29 books that I recently purchased. This is a very long haul. If I do hauls in the future, I will definitely try to do them a bit more frequently, so there's not so many books to talk about. But let me know if you have read any of these books and what you thought of them. Also, let me know some books you recently picked up and are really excited to read. As always, thank you so much for supporting my channel by watching my videos, and I hope to see you next time. Bye!